Hi, I'm Rusty Tanton with my co-manager host, Bresden O'Malley. Welcome back to The One-on-One. If you're new here, welcome. The One-on-One is a podcast built for the people who keep the software industry moving. Our mission is simple: to create a platform where engineers, leaders, and tech professionals can have real, honest conversations about the work we do, the challenges we face, and the industry shifts shaping our future.
Welcome back. Today, we're joined by an old friend whose career journey is a master class in following your passion and embracing change. She started in life sciences, made a bold move into the gaming industry, and then pivoted into consulting, where she now leads developers and several PMOs. Through every transition, she's followed what excites her, carving out a path that's both unconventional and inspiring. In this episode, we'll dive into how she discovers new passions, adapts to change, and leads teams across industries. If you've ever wondered how to pivot your career while staying true to what you love, this one's for you. Let's get into it. I'm here today with Natascha Thomas. We met years and years ago at one of my old company, RSI, like a lot of our guests. And I've always really looked up to Natascha because she was in the gaming industry for a long time until leaving and eventually ending up in consulting. And I was really hoping, Natascha, you'd want to talk about your career journey because I really think it's fascinating. But this is your one-on-one. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start is how I got into tech. So I always had a passion for science when I was young.
Nice.
I ended up going to school and I graduated with a neuroscience degree from UCLA. And that's even a funny story. I started out in biochemistry. I loved it. I loved biochemistry. I loved organic chemistry. And then my junior year, I had to take a class. It was called Transition Metal Chemistry. And I hated it. And so I dropped it and then I tried it again and I dropped it. And then junior year, I was like, what else is there? And there's like, well, neuroscience, you can graduate with all these classes and still graduate on time. And so that's why neuroscience. But I liked it. I liked it. Don't get me wrong.
Good.
But but yes, and so after college, I went into research that paid nothing. Believe it or not.
Sure.
And I'm showing my age here, but I did DNA sequencing
Nice.
for a while, and it's just you doing the same thing over and over again. Like when you're in college and you're getting your undergrad degree, your labs change. You have different labs for different classes. You have a different lab every session. So like I was on the quarter system, you'd have 5 labs and they'd all be different. I thought working would be like that. It is not. You're doing the same thing over and over again. So I really didn't like it. And I had a friend named Mihai. Well, he was poli-sci. I was best friends with his girlfriend, now wife. And so I was complaining about my job to them. And he says, you always beat me and my friends at these fighting games. You're really good at gaming. Why don't you come work at Activision? Because he was a test lead at Activision right out of college. And I was like, okay, I'll go do this. And it paid just a little bit less than my job that required a bachelor's of science. So I quit that and went to Activision. And my first project was Tony Hawk Underground.
Oh, cool.
It was.
I'm going to fangirl just a little bit for a second. That game shaped my childhood, and that soundtrack shaped my childhood. And you will hear that from a lot of people.
The soundtrack was amazing. It was amazing. It was so good.
It's a solid game. Yeah.
It was a very solid game. And so my job, this was my first tech job ever. So this was a long time ago. I want to say 2002 or 3. And so they sat us all in a basement, all 200 something people with these picnic tables. You didn't get your own computer. And so all you had was these big CRT TVs, and you had your own little test PlayStation you're playing. I was part of the network testing team, so I got to play multiplayer all day long for 8 hours straight. Sometimes we get overtime, right? And I just could not believe they were paying me to do this. And then when you found a bug, you had you broke your bugs down in your notebook, and you'd stand in line and enter it in the PC. And so that was my first job, and I loved it.
Oh man, that sounds great. Yeah.
I am so jealous.
Yeah, yeah, how are you gonna do something else after that? So yeah, and that's when the games would have these almost waterfall like cycles. So you'd have like alpha, and then you have like one production tester there, and then once it hit beta, and then everybody's just hammering, hammering, and testing, testing, testing.
Yeah.
And so I'd say the test cycle would last like a year. And so
Mm.
that was a solid job. And so yeah, I was on that until that launched and it was over. And then I worked on it was the streets of LA. It was like a GTA game, but it wasn't too crime for streets of LA.
Mm.
I worked on that, and then my contract was up. I went to EA to do testing, but yeah, so I started out testing, game testing. Absolutely loved it. Didn't know anything about the industry other than I used to play the games, and I remember at Activision there was this guy that this lead producer came in the break room and was like had this like giant bags of Taco Bell and like dumped all these tacos onto the table and he was like, tester's feast, like, and he was the one that was like, here's what, as we were like eating our free tacos, he was like, here's what's going on. We're going to try to get to the gold master by this day. So I need you guys to have your blah, blah, blah. Right. And I was like, I want to be the taco giver. I want to
Yeah.
be the one like saying who does what. And so I wanted to know what his did. So his job was he was a producer.
Hmm.
And that was my new goal. I wanted to be a producer. I wanted to do that job. And so you're in a pool of like 200 or 300 people. It's really hard to get noticed, right? To
Sure.
be that,
Mhm.
and it's relationships. You have to build relationships. So wasn't able to do that at Activision. Wasn't able to do that at EA, but I had built up those years of experience. And then I applied to a little company, privately held company called Nova Logic. And I don't know if you guys ever heard of
I
that,
haven't
but
heard of
they
that
made
one.
they
Was
started
it
out
a
doing Army
game?
simulators for the US Army, and then they
Oh.
did
Oh, I remember
uh,
that though. Yeah.
yeah, and they did their famous games were like Comanche. It was like a helicopter game for the public. They did Black Hawk Down, which was like their
Hmm.
Oh,
biggest. Like
that
yeah,
was
Yeah.
a
so they did all
big
Yeah.
I
those and
played
Team
a
Saber.
lot of that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
So
remember it
yeah, I
anyway.
worked
Yeah.
there.
And that's where you were a producer?
Yeah, so that was my first producer job. I learned so much. I learned so much, and I absolutely at that I was hooked. I was like, "This is it. I need to be a project manager producer because." And I was a associate producer. I was a baby producer at first, and then I got promoted to like no, I think I started out associate assistant or something
Yeah.
like that, production assistant, and then I got promoted up. But I liked everything about it. I liked putting the Gantt together. I liked putting checklists together. I liked checking in with everyone. That's when everybody was in the office and they owned their own office building. You get to walk around and looking
Mhm.
back on it because it was very waterfall. It was kind of funny because I'm like this 24, 25-year-old, like super happy, going to like bother some like developer that's like been doing this for 30 years, all grizzly, like, hey, Keith, how are you doing? So all these looking back on it now, because I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, like I could see how annoying that would be, the perkiness. And so they were really, really kind.
Circle of life. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my journey. I just worked at a different companies, worked my way up, lots of different jobs. And one day I woke up and I was 35 years old. And it had been like 6 years since I had been able to spend Christmas with my family. And I had no real personal accomplishments, because I spent so much time at work. I was
Yeah.
always on call, always on call. Like if you look on LinkedIn at EA, when I was at EA for my second tour, and I say that on purpose, you do tours at EA. Um, I was a producer. I had live ops for EA Origin that used to be their e-commerce
Yeah. I remember
system.
that. Yeah.
And so it was my job to make sure that was up 24/7. So
Oh
I
my
had teams around
gosh.
the world. We had knock resources, we had QA, we had developers, everything. And so I would get calls all the time, all the time. Like that was my life. And yeah. And so one day I woke up and I was like, you know what? LA is a great city. It's a great city for rich people. It's a great city for young people. And I am neither. I need to look at something different. And so yeah, that was the real catalyst. I always loved the work. I loved it, and it was sexy, and you believed in what you were doing, even if it was a mobile app. Like my last job, my last game job was at Disney, and so like I'd have apps like "Where's My Water" or like like little kid game apps, but they were cool. They were cool, and I was proud of them.
Yeah.
Oh, what was it? We had an MMO called Club Penguin
Hmm.
that
Oh,
like if
Club
you
Penguin was so big, Natasha. Oh my god, that's
yeah, I have like a whole
crazy.
shadow box with all of these like pins from Club Penguin for every
Oh
update and all
man.
that. Like,
That's
yeah,
so
so it
cool.
was such a fun job, but it was just so it was your whole life. It was your
Hmm.
whole
Wow.
life. And so I just was ready for I was just ready for a little more time to spend with family, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the real reason why I switched. It wasn't, the toxicity of the industry or people were mean to me or anything like that. It was just and
It's just
they
there's
have
no work
layoffs
life
too.
balance.
Yeah,
Like
it
there's no
wasn't
work
the
life
instability
balance in the
either.
gaming
Yeah,
industry.
it was the work-life balance that drove me out. It
Yeah.
wasn't the instability. It wasn't the, relationship building that was hard to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't any of that. I was just tired and old.
Hey, I mean, yeah, I
35's not
mean,
that old.
no, I mean, like I know Bresden and I, like I'm a little older than Bresden. Like anyway, I don't know. It's definitely crept up on me to where it's really hard to come home at the end of the day and to really be present with your family when
Yeah.
you've been pulling 10, 12 hours or whatever. And I feel you on that one. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I was so worried that you might think this is funny, but I was so worried that I couldn't do anything else because that's all I had been doing for
Mm.
13 years. And I was so surprised that rule sourcing thought I could deliver for them. And so, yeah, I did everything I could. But the funny thing, I do think that that game industry experience that they overload you, like the amount of work that you do in those positions is crazy. So when I went to rural sourcing, I was like, they're like, okay, so sometimes you're going to have to work 45 hours, because you're and you're going to have to maybe work 50 hours sometimes and I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
really? That's like
that's all. Yeah,
that's so cute.
it's
So
adorable.
no, it was a manageable workload. There was never any yelling. People didn't curse unless they were happy. It was such a departure. But the thing that I was really not expecting was going to because I had never the only code bases, the only people I've ever worked with tech were only video games, only electronic entertainment, right? And so when I started getting clients that were, financial or healthcare or whatever, man, they would have environment mismatches, they would have bad processes and like stuff you
Yeah,
never see on any game project. Like, and so I just thought it would be so much better. Like, this is video games. This doesn't matter. Like, nobody will lose money or their like health insurance if this or their
yeah,
system goes down. But this over here where it's important systems, like they don't modernize them. So I did think that was very eye-opening, you
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Man, that's pretty crazy. So, how did you speak to your experience when trying to get a job in consulting instead of the game industry?
Ooh, so I lucked out. I'm gonna be completely honest. Rule sourcing recruited me. And so
Mm,
yeah, I just talked about like how I delivered, what I was able to do, the size of my teams, because the work is transferable. It's the same,
Yeah.
you're delivering software. And it's funny because at the time, the last job I had was Disney, and so I had to serve all their different business units, like parks or the cruises or ESPN, right? So I had to deal with all those people, and you had consumer products, and you had some bad clients, that I had to deal with. And so yeah, I was talking about that. Oh, I can handle clients because let me tell you this story about this client. And I think it was I don't remember if it was the head of HR at RSI or somebody else, but they said, at the end of the day, though, you have a shared CEO. You
uh,
won't have that here.
Yeah.
You realize that. And I didn't, that's kind of like privilege, right? When you have privilege, and things are slightly, you don't know that because that's just the experience you've always
Right,
had.
right, totally.
And so, yeah, it makes a difference to have a shared CEO. So yeah, so that was good. But at least I came with some skills, right, to manage customers and clients.
Did you find any differences in handling engineers who are making video games versus the engineers who are developers slash QA slash SDET, anything of those random teams you've had to do in consulting?
That's a good question. That's a good one. I would say it depended because every company has their own culture. You
Mm,
know, so like for example, at Logic, the developers tended to be older because they had been there for that at that company. They had longevity, and so they tended to be really intentional with what they were saying, less emotional, less
Yeah,
less likely to do things that young people do, right? And it was a mature organization, so I'd say it was a lot easy. They more self-managed, right? Because I'm just like this young person checking up on tasks. Like they knew what they're doing. This is like the 40,000th game they made. So there was that. But then you'd have like companies like EA where you have this like young talent. It's very relationship driven, like that's how you get added to teams or you move up maybe because, and that could be a little bit more difficult dealing with people like that because you have egos, and you have these
sure.
big city guys. I'm the big city, Los Angeles guy, and you know what I mean. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, yeah. So I guess the way I dealt with them is pretty much the same way. It's just to not return negative energy. You
That's a
know,
really good
Mhm.
tactic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and just let it kind of wash over you. And but also I think it's really important not to avoid people that make you uncomfortable. So this is well before pre-COVID, but I'll share with you one of my tactics or if I have a client or a partner or
Hmm.
whatever that is remotely, like on emails or in meetings, they're difficult. They might tell untruths. They might be, somebody that is just you don't want to interact with, right? I lean in with
Mhm.
those folks. And then when we have, and not in a mean way, like, how are you doing, Gwendolyn? You know?
Right,
and then
right.
and
Charm
then when we
offensive.
have to
Yeah.
meet when we have to meet in person, I make sure to sit right next to them. And
Nice.
Mm.
not in a like intimidating way, but in a way is to show, and I'm friendly when I talk to them and when we're talking, I'll look at them, but to show that, I'm here to support you, but I'm also not scared of you and you're not going to make me go away.
That's
So,
awesome. That's a
yeah.
great tactic. Yeah.
That is a really good tactic.
Yeah. They tend not to do that talk crazy about you too when you're sitting right next to them, which is weird because nobody's going to ever do anything, right? Because you're all in person, but it does help. It's almost like you do have your hand on them,
Hmm.
but you don't.
So, do you ever miss being in the gaming industry?
Yeah, sometimes.
But I guess the work life balance probably would prevent you from going back to it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. But I think about it sometimes. Like, if I won the lottery, I might go do a stint because then I could just be like, "That was fun. I did 3 months."
Yeah.
And now I'm
Yeah.
tired, so I quit. But, but yeah, there are very few. If we were financially solvent, so I didn't have to worry about, oh, I could get laid off because that's the
Yeah.
game industry, like all the time, right? But there are some IPs that I would absolutely want to work for, and I'd work the 60 hours. So I love BioWare games,
Mm.
that next Mass Effect. I don't care. I mean, they could pay me 50 grand, like they could pay me nothing and I would just work, because there's just some things you're really passionate
It's a
about,
passion. Yeah.
so yeah,
No, I mean,
yeah.
it definitely, go ahead.
Yeah, Valve would be for free, dude. I would just go there for
Oh
the
my
week.
god. I'm pretty sure they pay their devs to not do anything and just hang out. I do have a question.
Hmm,
Now, so you're a director now,
yeah.
and you're still in consulting. You haven't changed from that.
Hmm.
How do you find passion in your current position?
Mm, that's a good question. I'll say, like, I've stuck with consulting for so long because it's always something new. I do
Mm.
love like getting different clients. It's a different industry. You build different relationships, new problems. It gets boring to me. Once I've everything is in order and you're just running, like that's when I want off an account,
Yeah.
And I think that's from the game industry because you're on a project for a year and a half, and then that's done. You move on to the next thing. So
Mm.
I do like that as director now. So like my role's been changing because the
Yeah.
company's been reorging.
Mm.
So now my role is I am practice lead for our global delivery organization, and so helping to lead and shape those people,
Okay.
which is great, and making sure that we have the right offerings there, and training and upskilling and all that. I love working with other people, but another part of it, which I really am actually really happy about, is part of the reorg. Our COO says, our practice needs and our competency leads need to be billable every now and again. Because how are you going to tell somebody how to do their job and not be billable? And
Yeah.
you haven't done it. And so my last engagement ended in August of last year, and I got, because it had been a couple years since I got to be client facing, unless it was like a fire, right? Where you come in
Right.
and talk to the client. Yeah. No, where I get to build a relationship with them and deliver. And so that was really fun. And I'm just starting up another one right now. So I did miss that.
Mm. No, that's a
So I
great
really like
answer.
that, yeah. But yeah, still like, supporting a portfolio of, accounts, and, so I think everybody loves being the hero, right? Um, so I love
Especially us
that.
that play video games.
Yeah, right? If somebody's like, "Natasha, I have a problem," and then you're like, "Can we try this?" And they're like, "Genius," and I'm like, "Actually, it was a stupid idea, but I'm so glad, that I could help you." So yeah, so there's that, but I'd say that being billable, working with clients, building new relationships, and then just supporting people, being able to talk to people. That's why
Mm.
I
That's
stay.
awesome.
That's what I love. Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad to hear you still have passion, even though you left, I think, a career that's hard. It's hard to leave something you're passionate
It
about. So
is.
I think that's incredibly impressive. Looking back, is there anything you wish you'd done differently in your career?
Yeah. I'm not, I think there are some skills I should have worked harder to build, and I didn't, like relationship building for my own career. So like not relationship building to get my work done. Well, my friends, there are people that I worked with early in my career that are CEOs right now,
Yeah.
Mm.
and I'm director at a small firm, and a big. I don't think it's because I'm not as strategic as them, or I'm not a good leader. It's because I never developed my networking skills. I
Mm.
never did,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, if I could go back, I wouldn't be so idealistic, and they're gonna know from the quality of my work, and that's how I'll move up. No, that's not how it's done. So.
No, like you bring up a good point. I mean, I had never really thought about it that way. Think about it as there being a distinction between networking to get your work done and networking to build your career. Because because now that I'm hearing you say this and I'm looking back, it's like, oh my God, that's what I've been doing. Like I've been networking to get the work done. I haven't necessarily always like been intentional about networking to build my career in that way. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would have done that. I would have done that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's the main thing. But I'm pretty happy right now. And I honestly, I'm gonna be completely honest, and you can run this. I think I would not be a good CEO.
I'd work for you, Natasha, for sure.
I,
But
yeah.
whatever we make would probably devolve into a video game.
Yeah. Well, you could gamify your meetings, and like have everybody like log on to, your PS network to talk to each other and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe have VR meetings.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah,
how Meta wanted to do. Yeah.
We tried that one
yeah,
time, Bresden at Loyal. We
yeah.
had what was that? It was called you remember what I'm
Oh my
talking about? It
God.
was like
Gather
a
Town?
gather. Yeah, we had a gather. And
Oh,
so yeah, speaking it is kind of like a little game because like you log on with your teammates and each of your teammates has an avatar and you can kind of make them look like yourself. And you go around and you have like little mini games that you can play together in the gather space. it was like a fun little diversion. I think
And like proximity chat.
yeah,
So, you can sit next to
Oh,
each other at a desk and like kind of chat back and forth if you wanted.
was
I
it like pixely old school looking?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I think I've seen that
that's it.
before.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
pretty
Swear
fun.
we must have tried it in RSI.
Yeah.
I think
I
we did. We had like RSI Con in there and it was
Oh,
amazing.
the
And it was,
con.
yes.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
And like our executives that were a couple generations that, a generation
Yeah.
ahead of us, they were like, but how do I move my man? It was so cute.
That was so much fun. I forgot we threw our own con in Gathertown.
Oh
I
man,
Yeah.
that's
remember that
awesome.
now. It was a blast. It worked out really well.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Wow, that's really cool. Haven't talked about, leading a PMO.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of fell into that. I'll be completely honest. So when I um when I joined Real Sourcing, it was really small and there were just a handful of project managers. And I ran a couple accounts and then I found myself, I want to say like a year or two, and I found myself on the bench for a whole week and I thought I would go insane. Like it was crazy.
For
And so I
only a
was like,
week.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it was so bad. But you're in the office too. So you're just like staring at the computer, you know what I mean? And trying to like do you demis. And so I said, there has to be something better. And I remember one of our sales guys, Mike Gillen, said, this weekly report that you put together, I love it. I love it so much. And I was like, oh, maybe I should templatize it then. And that was the start of it. That was the start of it.
Nice.
And so I started putting these templates together and I was like, you know what, that would be kind of rude if I was like, hey, there are these templates. And so like I built like a little coalition, a little group of senior project managers that we would that would review these templates and then put it out. And then, it's just grew
Hmm.
and grew until it was legitimized. I think it was Trey Sparks that legitimized it, said, okay, we have something real going on, these templates, and we're going to ask people to actually use these now.
Hmm.
And so we started building out processes and templates. And then, yeah, and they were like, so you're the ringleader. How about you do this? How about you be the leader? And I'm like, cool, cool. And so, yeah, I really liked working with the project managers because the stereotype is that they're very type A, they don't like sharing, they want to run everything, but I don't think that's true. That I'm close friends with two extremely talented project managers, and then I work with them. I think project managers and program managers run everything all the time, have to remind people, have to remember everything, take on that emotional burden for making sure that things
It's a
drive
lot.
forward.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So like, and I've noticed a lot of them do it in their private life too. Like when you go on vacation with a project manager, it's all like, and so I think a lot of them are like so relieved when somebody else is like, can I drive? They're like, oh my God, I get to ride and just look at the landscape for once. I'm in. So so it wasn't like there was this power struggle or everything. It was
Yeah.
very collaborative. Everybody was very collaborative and supportive. And I did love that. I did love that. Yeah. Yeah. So
What what are the key skills to lead a PMO successfully? Because both Rusty and I are
Yeah.
EMs, and there's some crossover, but there's a distinct difference.
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Okay, so I think they have to be collaborative. They have to be open to feedback. They got to be organized. And I think they have to know project management best practices. But they also have to know they don't know everything.
That's a tough one.
That
I
is a tough one.
I always like to tell people like the optimal knowledge level is knowing enough to know how much there is you don't know, right? Like that's
Yeah.
like your optimal, and I think that applies to anything you're doing. And that's that's what I tell people their goal should be, is to know enough to know how much is out there and how much there is you actually don't know.
Yeah. And know your people.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's made me the most successful because I'm not very technical. I can't code, but I feel like just like Commander Shepard from Mass Effect, I'm an excellent tactician.
There you
So
go.
I can't do all those jobs, but I know my team. I know who's good, at what and who likes to do this thing. And when you're doing something that you like, you're going to be so much better at it, and making sure that people, have the right areas of ownership,
Hmm.
and you'll be successful. So you don't have to know everything those people know. You don't have to know half the things they know. You just need to know about them, what they know.
I
Nice.
think that's a good question. Is there anything that you acquired from life sciences and the very beginning of your career that you still use today that helps you be a successful PMO?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think yeah, like making a hypothesis and validating it, critical
Hmm.
thinking, not just,
Mm,
and I think that lended really well to when I was in QA too, with the negative
Yeah.
tests and all of that, not just
mm.
taking things at face value and saying, oh, that's working. Okay. Is it really working?
That is the
I
key
think,
difference between like QAs and devs.
Yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
devs are thinking along the happy path, and the QAs are like, what's going to break? What's going to fail?
Devs are like, oh, my stuff never fails.
I am just, for the record, I am not super much of a fan of the trend away from dedicated QA people. I like having
yeah,
dedicated QA people.
yeah. I believe in the power of ad hoc
Yeah.
testing. Because that's where you find the real doozies,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I just don't think we're at a good place with AI where AI can predict what humans
Hmm.
do, because humans do crazy things, you know, all
Yeah.
sorts
No.
of things.
Yeah.
Very
The AI's
true.
problem is that it thinks logically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I was a kid, this is one that I still like, I laugh about all the time. In Ratchet and Clank, there's a level where you're basically a skateboarder. And so you have this hoverboard, and I found a place where when you die, you respawn, and it would then go directly into a box with like two of the currency in this box. And so I rubber band my controller, and then I left it to do that for like
Yeah.
4 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I got, million bolts or whatever. And I mean, I broke that controller for sure. I always drifted to the left after that. But then after that, you start like pushing boundaries. You
Yep.
you learn how to push boundaries. I remember when my brother in WoW got into a place that they worked so hard to keep low levels out, and it took him 3 days, and
Hmm.
he was able to climb a mountain eventually and find the one spot where the collision boxes were off, and got in and summoned the big boss at like level 4. It was
Oh,
ridiculous.
wow.
Yeah, it was a big
Yeah.
deal. It like they put it on the page of like WoW's newsletter. It was a whole
That's
thing.
awesome.
And like that's what we do,
Yeah.
especially young.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I love that. I do think, and I'm only half joking when I say this, but I do think one of the things that really helped me be successful in my career as a project manager, engagement manager, which risk management is so important.
Yeah.
And I
Mm.
have anxiety. I always have anxiety, and so what that is, the way I cope with that is I think about the worst case scenario, and then plan for that for everything in my life, and then that's soothing, right? And so at work, that's what I'm doing all the time. What's going to break? What's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, let's plan for that, and that just really dovetailed really well into project management.
Now that's a key skill. Do you have anxiety?
You have anxiety. You
Come
can be
run
a
a
project
project.
manager.
I
Yes.
love that, and that will be our clickbait title.
Yep, that's absolutely the clickbait title.
Natasha, what is next for you? What do you think is next in your journey?
I don't think I want to get out of consulting. I really like that. I never get bored. I
Oh,
love
beautiful.
it.
That's
I
great.
love it. I love the thrill of the sell, and so I think I definitely want to stay on the development side, the delivery side, excuse me,
Hmm.
delivery side.
Mhm.
But you know this, Preston, when you're on that client and they're like, you identify a gap And they're like, yes, you know what? I think we
Mm.
could use another scrum team, Natasha. That's a great idea, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to take that back to your sales team and you're like, here you go. Just the thrill of
Yeah.
that,
Oh, it felt
growing
so good. It felt so
No,
good.
that's
I
great.
did it one time. And that was I built a relationship with that salesperson because I got him a sale. And oh, I felt so good.
It's the best feeling. Or when
Oh,
you
God.
partner with somebody, you get that sale when
Yeah.
you button something up, or when a client is like,
Yeah.
thank you so much, you solved my business problem, you and your team.
Hmm.
And you're not, I don't know, you're not saving lives or anything like that. You're solving business problems, but it is nice. It is really nice. It is as fulfilling as when I used to launch a game, because it's like
Yeah.
I helped do this thing. I know this is a little off topic, but I shared how I'm a collaborative. I love nothing more than being part of a team and
Mm.
then winning as a team. I did band from, I want to say, third grade through college. And
Wow.
part of that is
Hmm.
because, you're playing music as this group, everybody has
Yeah.
to work together. I just love that feeling. And then after all this practice as a group, you become one organism. I loved marching band. I did it all through college. And I kind of feel like that when I'm working on a team, like
That's
we're
great.
a marching band, marching in
Oh,
our formations.
that's an amazing analogy. I love that. That is really
Oh,
cool.
that's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you have any final closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I have completely changed my career path. And so I tell this at every talk, like, just because you graduated with one thing, just because you spent, 13 years doing this one thing or 5 years doing this other thing, it doesn't mean you can't completely change and do something else, because you spend most of your life working. So you might as well work in something that makes you happy.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That's a great final thought to go out on. Breslin, do you have anything else you want to throw out there?
No, it's amazing. Thank you again so much, Natasha.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Opinions expressed on the one-on-one belong only to us and our guests, not to any of our respective employers. Speaking of that, does this platform call to you? Do you need a one-on-one? You can find us on the web at theoneonone.show. That's the number one on the number one.show, where you can sign up to be a guest. You can also find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube by searching for The One-on-One. Please rate and review us on those services. It really helps us out. The One-on-One wouldn't be possible without listeners like you and a fantastic community of people who help us in large and small ways. Special thanks to Cameron Cooper, who helps us with marketing, Michael Ducharme, who created our bumper music, and Elena Sayaj, who's been a huge booster since day one. Thanks for listening.